Welcome back to our search for the ruins of Atlantis. Today, I'm going to start with the location we saw in the last episode. It's area number 4, which I marked in Google Earth and we saw in the last episode at the beginning of the video. You might be wondering why we're looking at this image again. I've been wondering what these blocks in the rock could be. In the last video, I said that these objects look like the foundations of houses with the ruins of the outer and inner walls still intact. In these places, limestone sediments are still visible, partially covering the objects in the rock. These formations are very interesting, however. I believe that they may be entire perimeter walls of buildings with windows. More precisely, the shells of buildings that have been literally cut apart. This means that in places where there were windows, the glass melted and disappeared. If these are indeed the walls of houses that were laid or thrown into liquid limestone, the liquid limestone seeped through these holes and, after hardening, created a kind of mosaic. Here, for example, we see that these may indeed be the ruins of the outer and inner walls, and if you look here, you can clearly see the geometric shape of what was probably a larger building that once stood here. And this place again looks like a buried building shell. All these limestone tiles could have once been glass windows. It seems that these objects or buildings did not collapse randomly, but rather it looks like they were placed here. And here are the foundations of other buildings. This place, which we also saw in the last video, is still covered in rock, but the geometric profile of what lies beneath is clear. Although it is not very visible here, it is very likely that these are fragments of walls or panels that may have been well preserved in the limestone. As you can see, some of the ruins are still standing and other sections are disappearing. But these objects at the bottom of the image are different and may indeed be perimeter walls with windows. We may be looking at the remains of modern buildings as we know them today. We will look at the images from Giza, where there are also similar traces of buildings, so that we can compare the two areas. We are in Giza, Egypt, and we see a highlighted image of parts of buildings that are submerged in limestone. It is clear that the buildings must have been cut up and were literally thrown into the liquid limestone. The situation is much more chaotic than in the Atacama desert, because the debris here was thrown one piece on top of the other. Keep in mind the biblical painting of slabs with lime in this context. Giza is not a plain, but a limestone hill. The limestone here was liquid until these ruins of buildings were thrown into it and the heat burned everything. The objects are located at a depth in several layers. Egypt really has a different history than the one we know. It is not history, but a message. Many of the windows have already disappeared under the sediments, and I have only highlighted what could be identified, or I have been guided by pixels. However, in some places, other places where the windows were originally can be seen. They are lighter points and their geometry is still visible. Some artifacts appear to be mere fragments. Large blocks may be the foundations of buildings. When you think about it, it's paradoxical that tourists walk around admiring temples and pyramids and have biblical artifacts under their feet and don't know it. But let's go back to the Atacama Desert and measure the objects found. So if these were the foundations of houses with the remains of the outer and inner walls, and this was the building envelope with windows, we would try to measure the dimensions of these objects to see if they belong together. The dimensions are in meters and will be approximate. The width is about 50 to 51 meters, which is about 56 yards. If this is the foundation of a building, let's try to measure its width. As you can see, we have a width again of approximately 50 to 51 meters, or about 56 yards. So the width corresponds. Let's try to measure this object. Its width is again the same as the previous measurement. Let's try to measure this place. This object is 45 to 46 meters wide, or approximately 50 yards. But we only have approximate dimensions and keep in mind the significant deformation of the objects. Some of them are still hidden under sediments. While we're on the subject of building foundation dimensions, for the sake of interest, in another video we'll look at Teotihuacan in connection with the architecture of the Vatican. There is a place in Teotihuacan where the foundations of the buildings are identical to the foundations of the World Trade Center towers, in whose place there is now a monument in the shape of two pools. The dimensions and location of the foundations are absolutely identical. It's possible that the Incas and Mayans knew about these ruins and built new buildings and temples on their ground plan. He will now continue to explore other interesting areas. It's going to get more and more interesting. We're going to continue in the areas that I've numbered. We're going to ignore the numbers and move from south to north. Here we see another of the many limestone hills that mining companies are removing, and take a look at what lies beneath these mounds. Here is another possible piece of evidence that these may be preserved remains of walls or panels. Let's try another image on the timeline. Here it looks better and it seems that some of the interior walls are quite preserved. Others are missing and lighter sections in the rock are visible. On the left, this object is still covered by sediments. All of this was hidden under the hill. Up here, there are other structures. We are looking at a circular formation in the middle of the image, which could either be part of a square or a park, but it could also be a roundabout. But given that there are other traces of objects around it, I am leaning towards a square. This entire area was originally limestone hills that dominated the Atacama Desert. A few meters further on, a hill is also being destroyed. The situation is still the same or similar, and it is very difficult to determine whether these are house foundations. Probably yes. If you think about the geometric arrangement, some of the images are not of good quality, but let's be happy for what Google Earth has published. This image clearly shows that the debris extends all the way to the foot of the partially excavated hill. Smaller hills that have practically disappeared. Underneath them, strange geometric structures reappear. Here we see an interesting octagonal shape. It kind of resembles a large fountain in the middle of a park, and maybe we're not far from the truth. We'll see another identical one in a moment. But notice again what's around it. It's like you took an iron and smoothed everything out. There are many paths, or their shadows, around the find, and many of them led nowhere. Such circular formations appear in many places. Another disappearing hill is a little further north. If you are interested, you can view the area using the coordinates at the bottom right. However, you will need to have Google Earth installed on your computer and use the timeline. Some areas are very blackened. It is questionable whether this could be asphalt from traffic roads. Asphalt is also mentioned in the Bible. This area is very interesting. I'll bring the image back to the current date. You can see that there is a lot of work being done here to remove the rock. And here we see another octagon, which is probably in worse shape. I'll try to go back on the timeline. Now I'm not sure if Google Earth has obscured this place or if there's a bug in my computer. It just didn't show up. Look at how much debris there is here. More and more objects in the rock, some places are blackened. An interesting cluster of 4 circles resembling huge wells. On the left of the image, a smaller circular lattice structure appears to be emerging. It is still under the sediments, and we will try to measure its diameter. The circle has a diameter of about 1 kilometer, or 0.6 miles. Near this circle there are again geometric blocks in the rock. However, notice this octagon, which has been preserved in good condition. Roads converge towards it. In this case it really looks more like a square, also considering that the probable foundations of buildings can be seen around it. This area is not yet cleared, but it seems that some geometric objects are appearing in the rock. For example here. Google Earth doesn't show the area of the older date. Let's look at another place. We will continue in this area. We will zoom in on the image above. We are looking at the pools of water. The dams are made up of a lattice structure that is hidden in the rock and covered with sediment. This means that in these places the stone slabs on which the cities stood are missing. There is groundwater under the entire area, which may seem paradoxical, because the Atacama Desert is the driest area in the world. To better understand what the lattice structure and the stone slabs were, let's look at a picture of an area in India. Here you see a lattice structure. There is water underneath. And on the structure are incredibly well-preserved stone slabs on which cities stood. The slabs show a precise cut. So far, only a lattice structure has been discovered in the Atacama Desert. The Bible speaks of the slabs, but nowhere in the written record is their number preserved. Therefore, the number is given as 2, just like with the pillars of Hercules. We will now continue westward. I call this place the sarcophagus region. Let's move the timeline to an earlier date. Here too, water pools appear and dams are part of the Earth's lattice structure. There are strange sarcophagi in the area, and it is likely that these sarcophagi cover the pools and the lattice structure. This means that the slabs are again missing and there is no trace of buildings in this area. Here you see circular holes that look like wells and are still covered in sediment. We're going to measure their diameter. The diameter is approximately 25 meters, or about 25 yards. Machines drill these holes and they appear in many places as circular wells. For example, here. It is therefore likely that there are pools of water beneath these sarcophagi. The area is very large, and you can see it in detail for yourself on your Google Earth. Large areas are still hidden under rock and some areas appear to have been broken out. Mining company employees have full facilities here and even a casino. We look at another area, and the same picture appears again. Another disappearing hill. But here we also have another square, or park. In this case, the center appears to be round and there are paths leading to the center. However, it could be an octagon again. Still not cleared of sediment. And as you can see, there are distinct objects in the rock all around. They could be the foundations of houses in a geometric arrangement around a park or square. And here is also the disappearing hill. The picture is exactly the same everywhere. You can see how far the outlines of the buildings extend. This area resembles the shadow of a red football field. Here you can see mining machines working and biting into the limestone. More structures are emerging. And one more hill. It's not very visible here. The area is dark. But still, it's possible to see the outlines of geometrically regular structures in the rock. Here, other light structures also appear under the sediments. Let's look at another area. There aren't many finds here, but I want to show you something. First of all, there used to be another hill here. Here we probably see more house foundations, and notice the horseshoe shape. I'll show you a picture I took on Google Earth of the construction site of New Cairo, so you can see that this architecture was not just in the Atacama Desert, but it was global. This image comes from a site near modern Cairo. in an area where new buildings and transportation infrastructure are currently being built. The shape is the same as in the Atacama Desert. These limestone sarcophagi are likely located where the foundations of buildings once stood. There are more similar groups of building foundations. New Cairo is being built on the site of a prehistoric city from our point of view. One might even say a biblical city. But compared to our architecture, a very modern city. In one of the next videos, we will show where the ruins of houses in Giza probably come from. I'll show you another picture, which is also from the New Cairo development area. Notice the geometry. The building in the middle is built on an octagon. Roads radiate out from the octagon. In this case, it's a kind of roundabout, and very likely other roads will be connected to this roundabout. But now we will return to the Atacama Desert. The next area is number 27, and in this section we see a city built for the mining company workers who work and live there. In this area again we also see water pools with dams formed by the Earth's lattice structure. In detail you can see that the internal structure of the partitions is damaged. In other pools these elements are completely missing. Let's try to move back on the timeline. You can see how the work on uncovering the pool is progressing on the timeline. However, in some cases, it seems to me that the images on the timeline are a bit jumbled and a little common sense is needed. Road access will be created in this area. Given the existence of the road we see here and the remoteness of the site, it seems pointless to build another complicated transport network in this area. This new road will go around the pools. It is possible that they were there many thousands of years ago. Note that there are more roads in the area. In Egypt, new roads are literally being carved out of limestone blocks, as we will see later on this channel. In the middle of the roadways, there are drawings similar to those on the Nazca Plain. I wondered what this decoration was for. People driving by in cars can't see it. These symbols were created to be seen from a great height. How old are the Nazca lines really? A bird appeared here. And there are 3 llamas in this section, and they are hard to see. It seems they are still not cleared of sediment. All of this is only visible from above, and to the people living below, this decoration doesn't make much sense. Similar patterns along roads can be found on the South American continent, as well as other completely pointless and complex transportation routes in remote areas. We will explore another area. We'll look at 2 or 3 more places so the video doesn't get too long, and we're looking at one of them right now. You can see for yourself that the limestone hill disappears again and structures appear in the rock. Notice this area. A beautiful geometric shape of a cross with a circle inside, and the whole thing is placed in a rectangular shape. Part of this geometry is still under the limestone deposit, as are the objects on the right side of the image. So it could be a square or a park. I don't know exactly why they are clearing these areas. There are several answers. Are they looking for minerals, including lithium? Are they building new cities here? Or is the discovery of these places intended to make us search and think? There is a demand for lithium in the world today. Lithium appeared as a result of cataclysmic disasters, and these areas are proof of that. But it is possible that there is much more to this activity. In any case, we are looking at something that has been hidden here for many, many thousands of years. Here it really looks like the remains of the perimeter walls. The lines are geometrically regular. At the end of the video, I want to show you one more mine, which is located east of the Andes Mountains above the area with the sarcophagi. The reason I want to show you the place is so you can see what this mountain range looks like. Notice how many colors there are here. These hills look as if someone had put them together from colored cones. The surface looks very plastic, but it is possible that it is flat. The colors on the surface correspond to the colors in the cross section. You can see the colors changing at the foot of the hill and the roads disappearing under this hill. It is likely that there is another city hidden under this hill, or just a lattice structure and water pools. The colors are very visible here. Do you see how the colors alternate? These limestone hills are not of natural origin, but were created by someone. This image clearly shows how the colors of the cones correspond to the color of their vertices. There are many more similar mountain ranges in the Americas and elsewhere in the world. The colors are different, for example, red, yellow, orange. By the way, how did the colorful mountain range, such as the Zhangyi Danxia landform in China, come into being? I'll say goodbye to you for today, and next time we'll talk about the Beigong pipes in China.